This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
World leaders arrive in Beijing for the second Belt and Road Forum. We look at opportunities for Africa. Southeast Africa bracing itself for another violent storm a month after Cyclone Idai devastated the region. On World Malaria Day, Ugandan authorities insist the disease remains a burden despite a drop in deaths. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. With me is Ramanyang with a preview of your business news.
That's right, Lindy. Thank you. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. South Africa's economy is feeling the pinch of inconsistent power supply. And tech entrepreneurs in Mozambique are investing heavily in the region's startup ecosystem. We'll be taking a look at that and plenty more in the course of the hour. For now, though, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Lindy.
Thanks very much, Rama. Now, world leaders, let's begin, of course, in China, where world leaders are arriving in Beijing for the second Belt and Road Forum at the Great Hall of the People. Chinese President Xi Jinping met with heads of state and government from Asia, Europe and Africa. They, of course, include the Prime Ministers of Malaysia, the United Arab Emirates and Papua New Guinea. Earlier, he held talks with his Mongolian counterpart, Khaltmajin Batulga. During the meeting, President Xi hailed the impressive progress achieved through the two countries' partnership in building the Belt and Road Initiative. Xi Jinping also met separately with his counterparts from Serbia, Kenya, Uzbekistan, Philippines, Cyprus, Belarus and Egypt. These heads of state expressed hope for more and deeper cooperation through the BRI. The world's most important investment project for the next 100 years. That's how Ueli Maurer, president of the Swiss Confederation, described the Belt and Road Initiative. Switzerland and China are set to sign a memorandum of understanding on cooperation in third markets under the framework. CGTN's Tian Wei spoke to him about the potential of the agreement.
Switzerland and China are good partners now 70 years ago, and we will continue with this collaboration.
You talk about Belt and Road Initiative as a 100-year project, I read recently. What exactly do you mean? And of course, a lot of things could happen within those 100 years. So how is Switzerland cutting out your niche in this regard?
I think for the next 10, 20, 30 years, we need a lot of investments, and then we will profit from these investments for the next year. And I think that's the most important project for investments in the world for the next 100 years about. And so that's investment for the next and the next generation.
Yeah.
And I think the world needs some visions. We have a lot of private investments, investors in Switzerland there already for investments, for concrete projects. But now we have to wait a little bit, but just to have concrete projects. In the moment, there are a lot of ideas.
The free trade agreement between Switzerland and China is not just about ideas. It's about already specifics and possibly actions. What is your vision about pushing that further on the road?
Yes, we started with this free trade agreement. It's very successful. And I think now we have to do another step. And I think that's an advantage for China, because Switzerland is small. Switzerland can be a test market, a pilot project.
Well, the Belt and Road Initiative is also broadening China's cooperation with Africa. CGTN spoke to Melaku Mulaulem, the head of the Ethiopian Foreign Relations Strategic Studies Institute, about some of the benefits and opportunities stemming from the Belt and Road Initiative.
The African Union vision focuses especially on 3 points. Integrated, prosperous and peaceful Africa. Integration has direct relationship with infrastructure development. When we come to BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, one of the major tasks is construction of infrastructure. So this is direct relationship with the AU agenda for development. So this integration focused on especially on five major issues. One is high-speed railway, and also highways, and also aviation network, telecommunication network, and also maritime network. Maritime network especially focus on development of ports. So BRI is also working on these 5 networks. This is useful for the integration of Africa. And this also facilitate trade and investment in Africa. And the second vision of the African Union is prosperity. Prosperity means development. So for development, infrastructure is basic. As Chinese says, if you want to develop, you have to construct road. So road is very, very important. And China has also good experience in alleviating poverty, especially in the last 30 years. China could pull out 700 million poor people from poverty. This experience is good for Africa, the way how to pull such poor people out of poverty. The third one is about peaceful Africa. China is also participating in making Africa peaceful, especially through training and also through peacekeeping mission. China participated about 12 peacekeeping missions in Africa, including DRC, South Sudan, and also Darfur, Mali, and others. And so this AU development strategy is being supported by Belt and Road Initiative of China. China allocated multi-billion dollar for big projects that African cannot finance these big projects. This Silk Road Fund is a good opportunity for Africa. And the second one is technology transfer in constructing big projects. Technology, knowledge, skill will transfer from China to Africa. These big projects also create job for Africans. And also scholarship is also another advantage for human resource development of Africa. Many students of Africa could get scholarship in China. And the other opportunity is facilitating trade and investment in Africa. This trade can be facilitated through this infrastructure. This benefit for Africa. This also will increase trade interaction with also China. So far, the annual trade is about $200 billion. China has planned to increase this trade to $400 billion. So facilitation of trade is also a good opportunity for Africa, also for China, and also for other investors who need a lot of facilities in infrastructure. The other opportunity is not only for Africa. China could also benefit from this BRI. One thing, China can use of her reserve money for big projects and to get also interest from that, and also it increases soft power of China in Africa, and also this facilitates also people's relations, and also the bilateral and multilateral relation between China and African countries will also increase. So BRI is not only for the benefit of Africa, it also benefits China.
And let's go to South Africa now, where Sanusha Naidu, a senior researcher at the Global Dialogue South Africa, says the Belt and Road Initiative has deepened economic ties between China and Africa, especially in infrastructure development.
If you look at the China-Africa space, both policy as well as academic and a more broader trade and investment space, you would see that this is something that builds and consolidates and even deepens the relationship China has with African countries, built on development cooperation, built on trade, built on investment, built on infrastructure development.
And from south to north, Egypt is playing a crucial role in the Belt and Road Initiative due to its strategic position between Africa, the Middle East and Europe. CGTN's Yasser Hakim shed some light on the significance of the Suez Canal to the Belt and Road and how Egypt will benefit from such a mega initiative launched by Chinese President Xi Jinping.
The Suez Canal has witnessed a huge upgrade in the last 3 years. The waterway was widened and several economic zones and industrial areas were established to serve the trading vessels passing through.
هناك أكثر من 192 شركة عالمية بتعمل في تلك المنطقة.
There are 192 international companies working on developing the area. There are 3 main logistical seaports that serve 20,000 trading vessels that pass through the Suez Canal every year. There are silos, bunkering services, and industrial zones around the ports, with 68 factories so far, including Chinese from different sectors. Petrochemicals, textiles, real estate, and water desalination, among others. They're all benefiting from the services provided from the project.
The Suez Canal is seen as one of the focal points of the Belt and Road Initiative.
The Suez Canal can become a hub for the Belt and Road because of its location linking Asia, Africa and Europe from the Red Sea and the Mediterranean. Chinese goods would pass through at a faster rate after the upgrade of the canal. But also, Chinese companies are beginning to establish plants around the Suez ports. They manufacture products to be exported to the rest of Africa, the Middle East and Europe, making use of Egypt's free trade agreements with these markets.
The close ties between Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Egyptian counterpart Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has given an impetus to the cooperation on the Belt and Road Initiative. Egypt sees the Belt and Road as an opportunity to boost its own economy.
الاستثمارات الصينية عموما زادت بنسبة 75%.
Since the Belt and Road was launched, Chinese investments in Egypt rose by over 75%. The Chinese president has also pledged another $40 billion to invest in the country as part of the initiative. China has poured funding for energy projects in Aswan, railway transportation, infrastructure, and 2 industrial zones in Egypt.
All these Chinese investments and trade cooperation based on the Belt and Road Initiative are creating job opportunities, increasing state revenue, and supporting an economy that has suffered from years of instability. Yas Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
And let's go to West Africa now for some perspective from Senegal.
Africa is seeing opportunities flowing from China's Belt and Road Initiative. The theme of the current ongoing forum is to build one belt, one road and create a better future. A statement analysts feel resonates well with China's commitment of promoting multilateralism and global cooperation.
The number of participating countries in the Belt and Road Initiative is growing because at the beginning there were only 6 countries and later it grew to more than 80. Today there are hundreds of countries involved. In particular, the forum is held in the context of 2 opposing economic ideologies, namely multilateralism and isolationism that we will talk about.
The Senegalese scholar sees economic growth in his country under the initiative. Senegal is the first West African country to sign the One Belt, One Road cooperation document with China.
In the context of international cooperation today, the world has become a global village because of globalization, and it also faces common problems. Take environmental issues as an example. It's already a problem for everyone in the world. If there is no international cooperation between countries, this will be a disaster. Now, China's cooperation in this area can be said to be in a leading position. For example, China has implemented the commitments of the Paris Agreement and has also made important initiatives in environmental protection.
The Senegalese scholar sees a bright future for his country under the initiative.
I believe that the Senegal Emergent Plan will find an opportunity in signing the Belt and Road Cooperation document, and Senegal can become an emerging country by 2035.
d'ici 2035.
The Belt and Road Initiative seeks a win-win development cooperation among participating states. Chomhono, CGTN.
Staying in West Africa, the Chinese ambassador to Côte d'Ivoire says there are many new opportunities for cooperation under the Belt and Road Initiative across the African continent, particularly in Côte d'Ivoire.
There are many new opportunities under the Belt and Road Initiative. We will strengthen cooperation in Africa to realize major infrastructure projects in the telecommunication, energy, and transportation sectors. More concretely, as far as Côte d'Ivoire is concerned, we will continue to implement several projects, including in the sports, education, and aviation sectors. We will continue to work closely with the Ivorian authorities on exploring future prospects.
Je pense que ce deuxième forum serait donc dans la continuité.
I think this second forum will be a continuation of the strengthening of the Africa-China axis. African countries are already making huge gains with China, and the number are confirming it. Today, trade between Africa and China is about $148 billion, while trade between Africa and the United States is about $51 billion. This means that the trade volume between Africa and China is 3 times the volume of trade between Africa and the United States. I think it is a dynamic that is already established between China and Africa, and this second forum only reinforces this dynamic.
Ça viendrait renforcer.
6 years on, what is the state of the Belt and Road? And how is the progress?
Where are the challenges? Who is building, connecting, and benefiting?
Our global correspondents bring you personal insights, live business reports,
Interviews with the major players, investigation, and analysis.
For comprehensive coverage of the Belt and Road Forum, stay tuned to CGTN.
Well, time now for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Southeast Africa bracing itself for another violent storm a month after Cyclone Idai devastated the region. And aid agencies warn the humanitarian situation is rapidly deteriorating around Tripoli.
For a look at some economic data out of the country. The country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Penina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed, and this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives.
Reporting from Nairobi City Center.
News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. Africa Live. Find your voice.
A tropical storm is expected to cause havoc in southern Africa. Cyclone Kenneth has already hit the Indian Ocean French island of Mayotte with strong winds and heavy rain. The cyclone is set to make landfall in Mozambique later in the week, raising some serious concerns because the country is still dealing with the devastating aftermath of Cyclone Idai.
Cyclone Kenneth brought downpours and strong winds to the island of Mayotte. The island nation shut down its airports and schools.
We were told that the airport has been closed and the barges too, so we spent the whole day and today stranded and confined to the hotel.
Elsewhere on the island, residents dealt with fallen trees and damaged houses. Those living in shanty towns were hardest hit by the storm.
It has been very difficult for this kind of neighborhood. It's going to be hard for these people to remain here, which is why most of them are taking refuge at the school.
We are dealing with an extremely underprivileged population. Their houses are made out of sheet metal that is not exactly strong or very well secured.
Cyclone Kenneth is expected to make landfall in Mozambique. The country has been dealing with the aftermath of Cyclone Idai, which affected nearly 2 million people in Mozambique. Mozambique's National Institute for Disaster Management estimates Cyclone Kenneth will put nearly 700,000 people at risk. Astatal, CGTN.
Well, for more on this, let's go live now to Johannesburg. We're joined by Simon Gear, an environmental scientist. Simon, a pleasure to have you on the program with us. I mean, first Cyclone Idai, now Cyclone Kenneth. Tell us a little bit more about this latest tropical storm, particularly in terms of its strength, the path it's meant to follow, and the destruction it could cause.
Yeah, so Tropical Cyclone Idai obviously came through about a month ago now, and hits Mozambique in the middle of the country, in that thin waste of the country. Tropical Cyclone Kenneth, currently over the Comores, where it's killed 3 people. It's expected to then strengthen as it moves into the warmer waters to the west of the Comores, and then make landfall round about Pemba, which is a port city right in the far north of the country. So 2 separate areas of the country, but 2 very, very isolated, very, very poor areas of Mozambique being hit in the space of 4 weeks by 2 big, strong tropical cyclones.
And you talk about these being very isolated, very poor parts of Mozambique, and I suppose in other parts of the region too that could be affected. So how best then can communities prepare for this cyclone right now?
So there has been quite a lot of work done by local authorities trying to get people away from the coast for a start, out of potential flooded areas, so out of river valleys, up into more high-lying areas, into areas, out of the very deep rural areas and into areas where aid will be able to reach them after the flooding starts. So there is a fair amount of work being done, but I mean, people are people. They don't like to leave their homesteads and their farms and their animals unoccupied, and so it is really, really difficult to get people together into these aid areas before any of the flooding actually arrives. But there is work being done on the ground to try and make some preparation.
You know, of course, Simon, many people saying that Cyclone Idai really exposed Africa's vulnerability in managing natural disaster risks. What essentially needs to be done, particularly in the long term, in terms of filling these gaps?
There's a lot. I mean, certainly South Africa's military was able to react and to help, but in a very, very small way. You know, they didn't send anywhere near the sort of hardware that they were able to send to some of the tropical cyclones 10, 15 years ago. And I think there definitely needs to be a change in military thinking across the continent, that money needs to be spent on helicopters and on cargo planes and that sort of capacity, because often it's the military who are best suited to really getting aid into these very, very rural areas. And this is one of the most isolated areas in Africa. It's a long, long way from any economic center. They're about to get huge gas infrastructure, but for the time being, it's very, very isolated. And short of sensible military spending, where you spend money on aid type, strengthening your capacity to provide aid, I'm not really sure what else can be done.
It's a worry for these communities that are struggling with resilience in the face of natural disasters. Thank you so much, Simon Gear, joining us there live from Johannesburg. Let's now head to Libya, where aid organizations are warning of the worsening humanitarian situation in the country. The International Committee of the Red Cross says the situation has greatly deteriorated around Tripoli, where densely populated residential areas are now turning into battlefields. The aid agency says hospitals are struggling with chronic shortages of medical supplies amid power outages and weakened water pumping stations. Meanwhile, still in Libya, Sudanese migrants trapped in one refugee center say they want to be moved to a safer place. The battle for Tripoli has been raging for a third week now, and most of the refugees feel threatened. Here's that story.
They left their homes in the troubled Darfur region in Sudan in search of peace. The peace that they found here at the Ahmad bin Chetwan school in Tripoli, where they're housed. Fighting between forces allied to the Eastern Commander, Khalifa Haftar, and those from the UN-backed government has been on for the third week now. But for these migrants, it appears like the peace they have now is elusive once again.
We came here because of the conflict back home. I came here with my 7 children. We were not able to feed or educate them.
Most of these women have lost their husbands. Some have watched their husbands being killed. In fact, one of us was forced to watch as her children were being murdered.
It could be a lull before a storm as the fighting draws closer to their hideout. As thousands of families troop out of Tripoli to safer areas, the migrants are calling to be moved out of harm's way.
And everything is okay now. We are feeling some safety, and we hear the news from the other people as the calling. There is some shooting still now is continue, and we get the smile of life. There is available of the food and the water, and the children getting the playing, but we're calling more. The international organization help us.
It's 3 weeks since the start of clashes. More than 7,000 migrant families are currently stranded here.
Back home in Sudan, the wind of change is blowing. But for these refugees, it seems like they just walked into yet another storm. Laura Walubengo, CGTN.
Let's go to Uganda now. The country's health ministry says malaria is still a burden, despite a drop in related deaths. Malaria deaths dropped from around 5,000 in 2017 to 3,000 in 2018 in the East African nation. The health ministry is now shifting its focus on eliminating the disease to near zero by spraying mosquito habitats like stagnant water sources. CGTN's Isabel Nakiria reports.
Cleaning malaria out of the community. This group is fighting the disposal of waste into drainage channels. Clogged drainages are breeding grounds for mosquitoes. Mastula Nachisozi leads the weekly cleaning exercise in this Kawempe slum.
When we are doing community cleanups, we have our notebooks. Then we can record that this person who stays here didn't come up to join us when we are doing community cleanup. And during the village meeting, the next village meeting, these people are summoned to the LOC and we have punishments which we give to these people.
Mastula's community-based organization also carries out education on the dangers of malaria. Slums lack basic necessities like clean water and proper sanitation. Mastula says her efforts are beginning to pay off.
The situation has changed a bit because many people didn't know about the causes of malaria. Most of them thought that if it rained and you're in the rain, that's when you get malaria. But because we have been doing a lot of sensitization, what causes malaria? So we've seen these cases decreasing.
Health officials also plan to embark on spraying stagnant water sources like this one with larvicides, which kills mosquitoes at the breeding stage. They hope this will reduce the spread of the disease. This year, the Ministry of Health is asking everyone to take personal steps to protect themselves from malaria with efforts like Mastula's.
Our emphasis is on empowering individuals to ensure they are not bitten by mosquitoes. If they fall sick, they seek care very early before it becomes severe, and they are mindful of public health, that they don't only protect themselves, but they protect the community in which they are.
Uganda has been promoting the use of mosquito nets and indoor spraying to control the spread of the disease. 26 million mosquito nets were delivered to households in 2018. But Mastula and her group say they will continue encouraging community participation with the hope of sweeping out malaria completely. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala.
Still in Uganda, Gulu town in the north was once the center of a vicious conflict between the government and the Lord's Resistance Army, a guerrilla group that used to be active in the country. But after decades of war and displacement, people have returned home to reclaim their lives. Places like Gulu are now peaceful and business is thriving. CGTN's Daniel Arab Moy reports.
This is Gulu, a town that was once in the midst of violence and upheaval that wrecked their Choli land in Uganda. Hundreds of thousands of people once thronged this town, seeking refuge for fear of rebel attacks. The once thatched roofs of mud and water huts that dotted this town are no more. Gulu's infrastructure, with its once potholed streets and worn-out colonial buildings, has now got a new buzz, with major construction works underway as the town looks forward to a city status. Local traders like Boris Achayo and many others who had fled the town during the war are now back, and their businesses are thriving.
These days we are very okay because we can even work at night. We buy goods at a good price. Transport are very many. In fact, it is very good. So the security actually is very okay these days.
During wartime, you will never even cross this place. But now it's fair. Everything is now normal.
Several banks have also established presence in Gulu, a town that once had only 2 operating banks less than a decade ago.
Here in northern Uganda, the war with the Lord's Resistance Army is long past, and Gulu, once the epicenter of the insurgency, is on the rise.
Young songwriters and singers like Tempera Omona, who hails from northern Uganda, are now defining their identity with new hit songs like Gulu, a song that portrays pride and conveys a message of endurance and protection of future generations.
Look at every day positive and look at it as being on the way to overcome.
Tempera Omona's song tells the story of Gulu town and its dwellers, a place once devastated by war and hostility, breaking down the socio-economic and cultural aspects of the town north of Uganda.
Life wasn't what a youth is supposed to live like. You don't go out freely, enjoy life freely, go to the clubs. You know how the youth gets spoiled. We could not, because there was always curfew. And that curfew was real because these guys actually stormed places and killed and abducted.
Omona paints a picture of a resurgent Gulu town, waking up with vigor from the slumber of the Lord's Resistance Army War. Daniel Arab Moy, CGTN, Gulu, northern Uganda.
News just in, we bring you an update on the weekend blasts in Sri Lanka. The government has revised the death toll down to 253 from 359. Government says there was a calculation error. Most of those killed were Sri Lankans, but dozens of foreigners died in the tragedy. Investigations are underway to establish details of that attack. But now though, let's go to Raman Young for your latest business news.
Thank you very much, Lindy. Here's what's coming up in business. South Africa's economy is feeling the pinch from inconsistent power supply. Now we'll take a look at how tech entrepreneurs in Mozambique are investing heavily in the region's startup ecosystem.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads, where opportunity meets innovation, where profitable new markets collide with global trends. From the sound of an African bell on a stock market floor, to the shout of the trader in a bustling free market. It's colorful, vibrant and exotic. CGTN stands at the gateway to Europe, Africa and the Middle East. From Morocco to South Africa, we talk to the deal makers and actors who fuel its engines of growth. Only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Let's start with some macro data, this time from East Africa. Kenya's economy expanded by 6.3% in 2018, helped by quite a bit of rainfall, which spurred on agricultural output. Now, the economy had slowed down quite sharply to 4.9% in 2017, mainly due to drought and jitters over a prolonged election. According to the National Statistics Bureau, the recovery in growth in 2018 was driven by agriculture. That sector as a whole was up 6.6% compared to 1.8% in 2017. The World Bank trimmed its 2019 growth forecast for Kenya down to 5.7% from an earlier forecast of 5.8%, mainly due to delays in the main rainy season, which is supposed to start in March. The government expects the economy to grow by 6.3% this year. Over in South Africa, the mining company Anglo-American Platinum saw its first quarter output fall by 6% off the back of operational challenges, problems at the main power supplier Eskom and ore stockpiling. Amplat is the world's largest primary producer of platinum. It produced 998,900 ounces for the quarter that ended in March, just from over 1 million ounces in the same period a year ago. Now, the company said that the power cuts hit production at 2 of its mines, and it lost another 14,000 ounces of platinum output in February when Eskom implemented 5 straight days of power cuts. Amplat is now considering building a 100 megawatt solar power plant in order to hedge against future power losses. Still in South Africa, the country's economy is feeling the pinch of inconsistent energy supply as the power utility, Eskom, is struggling with an aging fleet of coal-fired power stations. Enormous delays in the completion of its 2 newest power plants, Medupi and Kusile, have led to blackouts as well as government bailouts to the tune of nearly $5 billion. The company is barely able to pay off its enormous debt burden. Here's CGTN's Angela Coppola with the details.
The current instability at Eskom isn't good news for heavy users of electricity like the steel sector.
You find that non-supply of electricity and increasing cost of electricity is becoming a problem to the subsectors because ferrochrome is a very important product that is being used to manufacture stainless steel, and stainless steel is a very important intermediary input that's being used to manufacture cars. So you've got this positive, negative knock-on effect and leading to increase in production cost.
The mining sector, on the other hand, is looking for its own solutions from renewable energy and topping that up with a mix of hybrids, diesel and fuel cells. It's a move away from Eskom and an attempt to lighten the fiscal load involved in bailing out the ailing utility.
I think the mining industry has come together and said, listen, we will deliver our own solutions, we'll pay for our own solutions. It doesn't have to come out of the national pocket, it doesn't have to come out of treasury. And it doesn't have to cost everybody a massive power increase at every home user to get power into businesses again. What we need is to break the bureaucracy. We've got to cut the red tape and let industry solve the problem.
If solutions aren't found and found quickly, businesses will close and thousands of jobs will be lost. The mining sector estimates that it could lose more than 100,000 jobs if something isn't done. The potential fallout in the metals sector is as concerning.
The subcomponents within our cluster, including the ferrochrome, they spend about 3% of the electricity cost. They spend just about 3%. But if we were to look at the rand value of that, it's about 14 billion rand, which is a significant amount, and it tends to eat into the margins of businesses.
The problem, say economists, isn't the big players that can afford the tens and hundreds of millions needed to build their own power stations.
Our concern is for the small and medium enterprises. We have over 60% to 65% of our businesses that are classified as small or medium enterprises. So our concern is that these businesses are going to close down, and there's a direct correlation between these businesses and employment that they offer. So we're very worried that the official unemployment rate of 27.1% is going to increase.
Business users and small consumers don't really worry themselves about whether the utility is solvent or not. They simply want electricity at an affordable price, and they're not getting that right now. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Let's head over to Tanzania now. A gold mining company over there, Acacia, has reported a slump in core earnings as it continues to struggle with production. Gold output was down 13% to 105,000 ounces in the quarter as a fall of ground in the North Mara Gokana underground mine presented access to much higher grade slopes. Now that in turn has resulted in a slip in earnings before interest, tax, depreciation and amortization to about $24 million in the month of March from $44 million a year earlier. The mine is also struggling with a long-running tax dispute with the authorities over there. It's cut output by about a third ever since the government banned the export of mineral concentrates back in 2017. Nigeria's Petroleum Ministry says the country's oil minister, Emmanuel Ibe Kachiku, has held talks with the president of Saudi Aramco, the world's most profitable company, about investment options in Nigeria, mid and downstream. The Saudi oil firm has been looking to expand downstream operations. That includes things like refining and petrochemicals production as part of its drive to become the world's largest integrated energy firm. Nigeria's state oil company has said it held talks with different consortia in order to revamp its refineries and save billions of dollars that it currently spends on fuel imports. Nigeria imports the bulk of the petrol that is consumed within the country, despite being Africa's biggest crude oil producer, due to its dilapidated and mostly non-functional refineries. Now, Mozambique, like many Lusophone countries, has been largely disconnected in the continent, primarily due to that language barrier. But tech entrepreneurs over there are investing time and money to boost the region's startup ecosystem. Pioneer Accelerator of Idea Lab, Sarah Fakir, spoke to CGTN on the strides being made to get entrepreneurs to compete both regionally and across Africa.
Idea Lab was founded by myself and Tatiana. We got this dream of having an entrepreneurial country because we used to see a lot of opportunities, a lot of needs that could be reached through any other potential idea. And we are in a country where where everything needs to be done. So there is a huge opportunity for entrepreneurs. Things have to be done in a different way, so where innovation is coming from. And the space of technology gave us a huge space to grow and improve and bring better solutions. So both are interconnected, but also bringing the more regular and traditional entrepreneurs and making them understand the importance of technology, for instance, to reach other markets or to use as a tool to improve their own business. So it works in both ways. There is the business environment itself. So in the last year, the cost of registering a company grow more than 400%, you know, from different taxes and things that you have to pay to make sure that you have a proper registered company. It's too high. As also governments start feeling more pressured in terms of bringing new solutions for employment and also for the work they're doing. Because even the government and the state, they need to innovate. So they are starting feeling that pressure and starting looking for entrepreneurs and the solutions they are bringing with something of value for them. Entrepreneurship is not yet a very strong, like we see, like for instance, for education or health. It doesn't have the same support in terms of sectors to work in. But I believe that we'll see that very soon. It's just a matter of convincing one person at a time, and when people start feeling touched by this and seeing and following and seeing the results we are bringing, then we start having these people advocating for us in different levels. But yes, it's a conversation that is being taken in Maputo more and more. We want to take this conversation outside Maputo, because I believe that taking this forward to other forums is also an additional pressures to make this an important thing for the country.
One final story for you in this segment. An organization in South Africa is helping unemployed women get back on their feet. Data from the country shows that women and girls make up more than 51% of the population, but almost half are extremely poor. The Clothing Bank helps to train, mentor and teach women to run their own enterprises with end-of-sale merchandise from retailers. It's worked with around 3,000 women in the last 9 years. CGTN's Julie Shai has the details on this project.
Very nice.
Tracy Gilmore and her partner started the Clothing Bank back in 2010 with just 10 women and an idea to empower females who could not find stable jobs.
We realised that there was this huge amount of excess stock within the retail supply chain, and we decided to try and use the stock as a tool to teach unemployed women how to run businesses and also as an income generation tool.
The Clothing Bank has become a source of income and inspiration for thousands of women in South Africa's townships. Many come here in desperation, believe the program confident and in charge of their own businesses.
I was not working. I was a stay-home mom with one child and 8 other siblings, which is my sister's children, my sisters who passed on 2011. So they took me to counseling, took me through classes where I learned how to run my own business. So I don't want to lie, after a 2-year full that I was here, I learned a lot.
I'm so proud of me because you know what, when you've got nothing, you don't have that dignity. But coming to the Clothing Bank, I get my dignity back as a woman.
The program caught on like wildfire. The bank receives over 160,000 items a day from big chain stores, which are sold cheaply to women on the program.
Everybody that is recruited into our program gives back by working 1 day a week in the facility, and they help us process the stock. We deep brand the stock, we obviously count it, put it into our system and then hang it in our shop area ready for our beneficiaries to come and purchase that stock.
3,000 women have walked through the organization's doors in the last 9 years. The program has now expanded to include men who are trained to fix and resell appliances. Julie Shah, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
And I'll leave it there for the time being. I'll be back at the top of the hour, though. In global business, we'll be looking at the Belt and Road Forum. Leaders from around the world are meeting in Beijing to cover a range of topics with regard to the Belt and Road Forum projects. We'll have the latest and plenty more from around the continent at 1800 GMT. See you then. For now, though, back to Lindy.
Thanks, Rama. Well, we'll take a short break now, but here's what's still ahead on the program. Coming up, how an exoskeleton is helping people living with disabilities learn how to walk again in South Africa.
Join us in global business and see Africa through our eyes.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
In South Africa, people living with disabilities are learning to walk again through the help of an exoskeleton. The exosuit is a robotic outfit which helps patients regain movements. It's used for rehabilitation after serious trauma or injury. The outfit, however, comes at a very hefty price, putting it out of reach for most South Africans. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
The exosuit came into the spotlight in South Africa when 16-year-old Brandon Beek broke his neck in 2012. He was treated in the United States, but on his return home, Beek started the Walking with Brandon Foundation to help others.
They did a lot of fundraising and purchased the exoskeleton and equipment to help Brandon, but then to also help the state of care and help others in his position. So it started essentially with Brandon, and then we've built slowly but surely to well over 100 patients.
The robotic exoskeleton fits on a patient's body and helps them walk again.
It's primarily designed for any level of paralysis, even if it's a spinal cord injury or a stroke. Those are the two main injuries that it's designed for. And I think the main benefits are threefold. The number one is the neurological recovery, so through walking and the high repetition of steps. And the number two would be secondary complications. And the third one is psychological.
17 years ago, I have a rugby injury and it caused me paralyzed. So it was in the beginning very tough to accept, but I was get into that exosuit, and the first time when I get up and stand, it was so amazing.
The exosuit stabilizes patient joints and helps strengthen weakened muscles. The suit is used around the world for rehabilitation, but in South Africa, unfortunately, the suit is no longer operational due to funding problems.
Now that the study is finished, then the funds have obviously stopped coming through. So we're at a current point where we need to pay for maintenance and for an upgrade of the exoskeleton, which can cost over $100,000. So we're currently doing fundraising to get that new suit in and keep our patients walking.
The robotic suit was helping many here. Now that funds have run out, the dream of standing and walking again has been short-lived. Judy Shah, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Coming up in your sports news, up next. Ethiopian running legend Haile Gebrselassie and British runner Mo Farah in a war of words over theft allegations.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way.
Match Point, only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
A war of words has broken out between Ethiopian running legend Haile Gebrselassie and British runner Mo Farah over robbery allegations in a hotel in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, owned by Gebrselassie. The Ethiopian has denied the allegations and has threatened to sue the Somali-born British Olympian. CGTN's Coletta Wanjoyi has more on this bizarre story.
Four-time Olympic gold medalist and reigning Chicago Marathon champion Mo Farah claims he lost money, a watch and 2 phones while staying at Haile Gebrselassie Hotel here in Addis Ababa while training for this year's London Marathon.
And the training's gone all well and everything else, but there was just slightly bit of problem with my hotel I stayed in Ethiopia, where someone at the hotel gone into my bag, opened my bag, took my money, took my nice watch. My wife bought me a present, and just to be honest, it's Haile owns the hotel, and when you stay for 3 months in that hotel, it was very disappointing to know someone who has that hotel and that kind of support couldn't do nothing, and at the end I was just like, they couldn't do nothing.